tuned to BNN, the Bad News Network.
As we go marching, marching, we bring the greater days. The rising of the women means the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler tend that toil where one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses.
I visited Israel as a young woman in the interest of having a place to call home, a place to return, a tribe, a family, a country, not Nixon's shameful America to belong to. The land itself was absolutely beautiful. I felt a love and attachment for it that deepened as I lived and worked as a volunteer on a small kibbutz there for half a year. As a young volunteer, I was being encouraged by the Jewish agency that arranged my passage there to remain in the country, make aliyah, that is, emigrate, or literally ascend to the Holy Land. I was urged to establish Israeli citizenship, serve 2 years in the army, and in turn receive a first-rate education and embark on a professional life in the modern society of the land of my ancestors. But the longer I lived and traveled within the embattled boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, the more its multiple schisms and paradoxes troubled me and made me question the wisdom of choosing to emigrate. But who doesn't want a homeland? Who doesn't love the feeling of being welcome and related to everybody around? Who wouldn't want to be home among family, living freely and safely in peace? I was in Israel in the mid-1970s. I could find no peace movement there then. To even mention peace then was considered hopelessly naive and ignorant, totally unrealistic by both Arabs and Jews. The whole country was feverishly engaged in bitter warfare, having sent spouses, sons, daughters into the fray. Every family, Arab or Jewish, religious or not at all, had lost loved ones in the ongoing conflicts, and every individual, regardless of creed or ethnicity, bore the haunted, driven mark of a soul aggrieved and permanently besieged. There were pockets and oases of peace. There were Arabs and Jews working shoulder to shoulder on the land, on the kibbutz. Neighboring villages that seemingly got along cordially and cooperatively enough with us. But everyone knew and felt that the land was not at peace. We volunteers from other countries had to understand the news blackouts were to protect the country's troops on maneuvers. In truth, I knew very little about the war's progress while I was in Israel, except that I saw almost no unarmed people my age during my entire stay in the country. Very little was ever spoken about the actual war. Young armed men and women in uniform would appear at odd hours of the night at the kibbutz, on brief leave to visit their parents till dawn, and then they'd disappear again, hitchhiking back to who knows which forsaken border. We were supposed to get used to the sonic boom of the bomber planes flying overhead as we worked the citrus orchards, and many hardly hesitated or even looked up as they passed. We put the children of the kibbutz to bed in concrete bunkers underground for safety at night, wondering silently what it might be like for those children to emerge one bright morning and find the adults' above-ground cottages blown to pieces. I marveled at the outward stoicism of Israeli women, or sabras, told that sabra meant like the desert fruit, hard and prickly without, sweet and tender within. But as I lived and worked there among them, I found not so much tenderness in these battle-scarred woman warriors, but much unspoken pain, numbness, a haunted emptiness, shock, post-traumatic bursts of throttled rage and much, much guilt, sadness, and confusion. And to a disgraceful degree, the men I met were bombastic churls. Not all. Some fine intellectuals, a dashing journalist, and some hippie-trippy mystics in Jerusalem were notable exceptions, but the norms for Israeli male behavior were, from the point of view of a young American feminist in the 70s, simply gross and appalling. After a night of seemingly innocent fun at a tourist bar with a gallant, flirty jeep-load of Israeli soldiers, 2 young American women I knew were viciously gang-raped by those same young soldiers, threatened at machine gun point with death if they reported the crime. Such is life in wartime. Who can claim that any army is not guilty of the systematic dehumanizing and psychological brutalizing of young soldiers? Who doesn't know of the horrific impact of soldiers on the land and on women and children in wartime? I returned to America not because I thought our political system was superior or that the war America was then engaged in made any more sense or was more justified in any ethical way than that of the Arab-Israeli conflicts. I came back because I needed peace, desperately. And I needed other people who saw things the way I did, with whom to strive. Having seen what I saw with my own eyes in Israel, to strive against war, to question and to protest the politics, the policies, the deadly assumptions and delusions that persist in the minds of closely related peoples permanently locked into violent, hideous wars. Because in Israel it came home to me how closely related we all really are. How alike in our dearest dreams and our worst nightmares, and how wrong in that light it is for us to hate and to kill one another. In America at the time there was an active, growing response to the ravages of our unjust war. A peace movement, a civil rights movement, an environmental movement, a human rights movement. All of these seemed vital to me and vitally connected, and I needed, after half a year in embattled Israel, to come home to other people like me, who could not and would not shut out the noise of war, and who would work all our lives to champion for peace. As a Jewish American who identifies strongly as such with all I was taught as a child that it means to be Jewish and American, it's impossible for me to condone what my people themselves have known and suffered. Such travesties about which we've said as a nation, never again. Ghettoization, apartheid, the walling off of communities, besiegement, blockade, and genocide. Unconscionable. How can I find this insane reenactment of all I was taught to cry out against acceptable, merely because some thoroughly corrupted governments, my own and Israel's, pretend that these things are not wrong? In the face of the world's compassionate and deeply outraged response, Palestinian children in Gaza, the Kaftan Bedouin kids I played with in the Sinai Desert, the Pashtun babies in Afghanistan for that matter, the children aboard the humanitarian flotilla, or the babies of my friends who are young parents now here, when they bring them to me to cuddle and enjoy, all look exactly alike to me. Exactly like the babies I'd kiss goodnight and sing to sleep in the underground bunkers of Kibbutz Hamapil.